Hi, I'm Robin, and welcome to my podcast, I'd Like My Crayons Back. Tonight, I'll be interviewing Lehel and Brandon about mead making. Hold on one sec. I'll bring them right up. There we go. Hi, guys. How are you?
Hello.
Doing all
All
right.
right. So, yeah, this podcast generally is about creativity in general, all sorts of things. And I know you guys make meads, and I'm curious how it is made and what you do and the ingredients and all that stuff. So start by somebody giving an explanation of what made both of you start doing this.
Actually, I started it because Brandon started it, so he can answer that question first.
Okay.
That's true. So I'll tell the long version because it's a podcast and you can cut out anything you don't want, right?
Okay.
Is that true?
Yes,
okay.
It is true.
So this is the long version is I had at one point in my life a lot of friends that are part of what's called the Asatru faith, which is it's one of the reconstruction religions of the old Norse pantheon. So people that worship Odin and Thor and stuff like that. Not racist ones. Some of them are. So it's a thing where, you gotta, some of them are, some of them aren't, when you're talking about like Vikings and yeah, but these guys weren't. And so I was friends with a lot of them. And part of their faith is a lot of their rituals involve mead or drinking mead or spilling mead out as an offering or things like that. And so usually in each of those groups, there's someone who makes mead, at least one person, maybe more. And so my friend Megan, who Lehel and your son Mark know, her dad is a mead maker. So I knew them for like a really long time. And he made mead. And one time I was at one of these events, and so I had mead like from a horn because it was a ritual thing. It was like honoring. It's what you do. And I was like, that was freaking good. So then I was like, okay. So that was the start of it. And then I had a couple friends my age who were starting to make it. One was Asatru. He was making it because he wanted to learn to make, because he was moving and wanted to be able to move to a new area and start his own kindred. That's what they called them. And I had this other friend, Evan, who wanted to actually start making wine, but he was like, dang, wine grapes are so expensive if you want to get good ones. And he was like, and honey, to get good honey is basically just any honey that's actual honey, which is a thing we can get to of fake honey. But he was like, it's a lot cheaper. So he started making mead just because it was cheaper than making wine. And it's functionally the same process. So those two guys did it, and they both made mead that were like slamming their first batches. And I was like, is this not hard? And they were like, no, it's not hard. And I was like, okay. So then the very first thing I did when I bought my first house, 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago, my first house, the first week I got a dog because I always wanted a dog. And then the very next week I bought all the gear you need to make mead making supplies. And I started making it because I just knew that it was so good and it was so easy. And then the first batch that I made, I went to a Yule celebration with some of these Asatru folks. I mean, I'm not Asatru. I just had many friends and I would get invited to these events. So I went, and the guy who taught me was my friend's dad, my friend Megan's dad, Greg, who taught me. And he was like, you should bring some of the mead that you made. I'm like, okay. So I brought it, and he didn't tell anyone it was mine. He just poured. I brought 2 bottles. He just poured it. People were like, wow, Greg, this is really fucking good. And he was like, yeah, Brandon made it. And they were like, what? And I was like, I guess it is. And they were like, you should. And there were 2 people there that judge mead making, like national mead making competitions. And they were like, I'm not saying it would win. I don't know, but I would enter it. And I was like, okay. So they haven't all been that good. Like I've had a couple stinkers here and there, but yeah. So I just kept doing it because people kept liking it. So that's my story. Okay. All right, go ahead, Lehel.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And then Brandon, brought mead out at some party or some thing at his house, gathering at his house. And then I was like, I want to do that. I want to make this stuff. This is great. And so he and I made a batch together that was like 6 or 7 years ago. It was definitely before I bought this house. So it was like at least 7 years ago. And it was a pair. That one, right? Our first ever batch together.
That was so good.
And it
That
was just
okay,
like we spent like an hour or two like in his kitchen getting all the ingredients ready and then putting it together and putting it in the container and just like, cool, we're done. Let's go drink some more mead and then wait the 6 or 8 weeks or however long it was until it was ready to bottle. And then when we bottled it, it was just absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was fantastic. And after that, we did it again more recently, last year actually, and we did another pair, and that's what I have here in my glass, and it is also phenomenal. Brandon, do you remember what you told me when we bottled it? You don't remember? Because I remember, because it was very special to me.
Okay,
he said to me that, Lehel, if you make no more mead ever, you are doing the world a disservice.
Yeah.
And I was like blown away, because I just like I'm just some dude, and I put some honey and did the things that he told me to do, and I did it, and we bottled it, and yeah, it came out great.
That's really good. Here,
Excellent.
You know what though? Here's another testament too that I think about this one too. I don't remember that, but I'm sure I did say it. It was a year after we made that. It was Sean was having a New Year's Eve party, and the whole group was going, and some people that we didn't quite know, but anyway, we all went. And I remember when you got there, you were like, yeah, I brought a bottle of, I still had a bottle left of my pear mead, from last year. And there was this crowd of people that went, what? You have the pear? And because they had all had it, and it was so good, and we all thought, like, it's gone now. It all got drank. So he showed up with this bottle, and there was just this feeding frenzy where, like, no one could get a full glass because there was not going to be enough.
Yeah.
But people just, like, freaked out. They were like, you have that? Like, it was crack or something, you know what I mean? So, but it was that good. So,
and just to clarify, when you're saying pear, you don't mean you're pairing. You mean pear the fruit.
PEAR, the fruit.
Yeah, just for people who would be listening to this.
That's a good
point. So, yeah, we can talk about the different types of mead in whenever you want. But when you have a fruit mead, it's called a melomel. That's technically what that's called, a melomel. So it's a pear melomel, and we'll explain the mead making process, I guess, and then we can talk about how you would make a fruit mead or whatever else. But
okay.
And you got to start with honey.
You have to start with honey. Okay, well, you guys can start explaining or drinking, whichever you prefer.
Oh, yeah, that's so. Here's the thing: the first thing you do when you make mead is you start by drinking mead. So whenever you talk about mead, I feel like it's also appropriate because we're talking about mead making. So like your first step in mead making and talking about mead making is drinking mead. It's just how it goes.
So
it's funny because I wanted to try some and I don't drink. And I thought the way you guys have, Mark was telling me, I'm like, and the way everybody's talking about it, I think I need to try some.
Yeah, what we can do is I can bring you a bottle of what I'm drinking. Maybe if you're willing to volunteer a bottle of what yours, then you can have some. So yeah, let's dive into the mead making process. Is that
okay. You go for it. I can do the show and tell because I got some of the equipment here beside me.
Okay.
So
you know what? 1 second, because maybe should I? Yeah.
Well, let's not get to that because that's the pictures that I sent you.
Right, but I was thinking I should drop out so we can see more of you and what you're picking up to show.
All right.
I'm just going to pull my picture out for a second.
Okay.
This way, when you're pulling things up and saying this is a doohickey.
This is a doohickey.
Then people can see it better. All right.
Yes, gotta show people our doohickeys.
Yep. Show us your doohickey. So the first thing about the first step of mead making is drink mead. But the first thing you should understand about mead is that all mead, if it is actual mead, it is fermented honey, and that's it. It's fermented honey, and so you can add other stuff to it, and it's still mead. It might be some special other name if you want to call it that. You could still just call it mead, if you want. But if it's not fermented honey, it's not mead. And so I say that because there are a few professionally made products on the market that will call themselves mead, but if you actually look at the label, it'll say like wine
wine
with
with honey.
honey. Yeah, or like liquor with honey, and it's like, that's not mead. Get that off your label. You're a liar.
Yeah.
So mead is fermented honey. So to make the
I'm
most,
bringing myself back.
You haven't gotten to the show and tell part yet. We can do that.
I know. It's okay. Keep going. Sorry.
so the all you really need, I realized I do have a thing I can show in a minute. All you really need to make the most simple mead, and most meads would have these 3 ingredients anyway, would be honey, water, and yeast.
Okay.
So I have some yeast actually that I can show you. So these aren't the yeast I typically use. There are different strains of yeast nowadays. Of course, historically, people used whatever they had available, usually fruit yeast off of apple or pear or something else like that. But there's yeast pretty much in our environment everywhere. The safest yeast to use if you were going to go organic would be to use a fruit like an apple, which I have done, and we can talk about that at some point. But nowadays, we have the benefits of genetic science. So this is, oh, sorry, that's so bright. Can you, let me try.
Not quite.
How about
there
that?
you go.
There we go. Okay.
So this is cider yeast, which I use. Cider yeast. It's designed for cider, but it doesn't have to be only cider. Also, if my volume gets too low, please tell me. But okay.
No, you're fine.
So that's one type of yeast. So it was designed for making cider, but you could make mead with it, and I'll talk about why you might choose that later. Then this is a wine yeast. So this brand Lalvin would be my most recommended brand. I mean, they don't pay me to say that, just from my experience. They're the best brand for making mead. Okay. And this one is EC1118, which I think is a champagne.
And it's spelled Lalvin.
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 Yeah.
That's the brand.
Yeah. So this one, that's the brand. This one's a champagne yeast, I believe. I forget exactly, but yeah, sparkling wines. This is a champagne yeast. So if you wanted to make a sparkling mead that was like a champagne, you'd use this one. That's why I have it. The one I usually use is D47, which is what we used for yours, I think.
Yep.
Right. And I would use that for pretty much any mead, but that's a Lalvin as well. So different yeasts are bred for different things. So one might be more carbonated. One might have a higher alcohol tolerance, meaning it will get more alcoholic before the yeast die out and stop making alcohol. Some might preserve certain types of flavors. So if you're going to have more floral or fruity notes, D47 is a good one to use because it will preserve those flavors. So just different things depending on what kind of yeast, what kind of final product you want. So anyway, so you have yeast, and it looks just like baker's yeast if you've ever seen that, like little dehydrated granules. Mm-hmm. It's basically the same genus, not the same species necessarily. I guess it might be the same species but different strains.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that part.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to check. But anyway, but they're yeast. So you get whatever your vessel is going to be, you're going to make the mead in. Usually that's either, a carboy, a glass carboy. That means a big jug.
That means one of these.
Like that.
And those come usually in 5 or 6 gallons. And I would say if you're gonna get one, get a 6 gallon. Like it's only like a few dollars more to get one that's just get a 6 gallon. Make more mead.
Yeah.
So
always make more.
Or the image I sent to you. I don't know if you want to show that right now. And that's a conical fermenter, which comes in lots of different sizes. That's a 7.9 gallon one. So it's just shy of 8 gallons.
Yeah, see, it doesn't look that big in the picture, but that's gigantic.
No, yeah, that's like 4 feet tall there.
Oh, God.
So that lives in a closet off my mud room, technically, just because I want it out of the way where the cats and the kids won't mess with it when it's going. So it just goes
right.
So, and these things, that one's plastic. Carboy is usually going to be glass. If it's plastic, it's going to be made out of food grade plastic that won't degrade or impart bad flavors. There are larger ones. There are metal. You can get, if you want to, you can purchase for your home like a metal conical fermenter that would be 20 gallons or something. You can get these. There's nothing illegal about owning that. But in certain states, there might be limitations on how much alcohol you can make within a given year.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I'm not going to speak on that because I don't want to say something wrong and be held liable. Right. But you can Google it. It's very out there. So most people making mead in Pennsylvania, which is where we live, are never going to exceed the legal limitations. You're just not going to, because you can make quite a lot. But anyway, so you basic steps. You heat some water in a large stock pot. I use a stainless steel stock pot. That's what I think Lehel uses too.
Yeah, I got one of those right here.
You just
nice
heat
big
water.
Gallon stock pot.
And you get your honey. Now that's the other thing that you want to be choosy about. What kind of mead are you making, right? So that there are different notes depending on the flowers the honey was collected from. So clover honey or wildflower honey, which are the two most common honeys out there on the market, they're pretty similar. They're going to have a slightly floral note and mostly just be very sweet. If you're using something like D47. If you're making a show mead, which is something that's very sweet and very alcoholic, which is what most meads are going to end up being, those would be fine to use those. Some people want particular varietals, meaning honeys that are of a specific plant type, like orange blossom. That's a popular one, to get orange blossom honey, because there's just a hint of that oranginess. You know what I mean? It's so subtle that you're like, what was that extra?
Yeah.
That
My
sounds
next
tasty.
batch is going to be an orange blossom one. I've got that ready to go in the
I'll
pipe.
have to have a sip.
Yeah,
When it's ready.
it's very refreshing. It's a nice summer afternoon one to have.
Yep.
Anyway, so differently, I've used blueberry honey before, which is one of the sweetest honeys in the world. So so that meaning not flavored blueberry, right? It's honey from the flowers of blueberries.
Okay.
So, these can get expensive because the only way to know that for sure is to say, because we know about how far bees will stray depending on the species, about how far they'll stray from the hive. So that means the only available flowers around a given hive have to be one type of flower to know that it's all that type of honey, which there are apiaries that do this. They partner with farmers and stuff like that. But then they can say, well, all right, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to get a gallon or several gallons of this type of honey. So most people are just going to use wildflower or clover because it's available.
Can I ask a question? How much
Yeah.
honey do you have to use?
That depends on math.
Okay.
Yeah.
Science.
So that's another thing I should say about this process is there's kind of like, there's an art and there's a science to it. So the science is if you either use calculators that are online that exist, you can find mead calculators and say, this is the type of yeast I am using. This is how much water I would like to use. And this is the amount of alcohol or the amount of sugar I want at the end. And the calculator will say, use this much honey, right? And so those things exist, or you can track multiple batches over several years of making mead and have your own math that you keep in a notebook that I can show you my mead notebook if you want. I guess I could go grab that.
Sure.
But,
If you want to.
so it really depends. So like let me go get my notebook so I can give you some
Okay.
real numbers.
Your notebook is just has so many years of data.
It's sort of like soap making almost.
Well, I mean, I personally have never made soap, but
I have. That's what I'm listening to.
Oh yeah, okay. There's definitely a lot of things that people think you can't make at home. You absolutely can. Soap is one of those things. Cleansers, all sorts of drinks, foods, that sort of thing. But with mead, it's just such a wonderful process because honestly, there's really not that much work. You just kind of like put all of your ingredients together. You have to make sure everything's sterile. We use distilled water, that sort of thing. Yeah, see, there you go. His many years of,
Wow.
of making notes.
You raise a good point, though. I would use distilled water. I would recommend using that.
Yeah, don't use tap water because that's going to impart flavors that you don't want.
Right.
You could use spring water. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. But
Right.
you want to use like spring or distilled. You want to use something that's is not messing with your flavors.
Right, exactly.
So
How many pages do you have in your book there?
okay, hold on.
Just roughly. You don't have to.
You asked the sciencey person how many pages.
If I was going to be quick, I'd say 20 pages, but that's
Okay.
not. I have a lot more room to fill, more mead to make.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, always.
So if
wanted to make-
I don't have notes on Lehel's mead because I think I made you write stuff down. Because it was
Yes,
yours.
I did,
Yeah.
and I don't
So-
have those notes on me, but I do have notes on the latest batch?
I can look back on your first pair that we did together if you want.
Yeah? Okay.
So yeah, hold on. That
You have the dates on that, right?
I should.
It's gonna be calling you.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was just, it feels like it was forever ago, and it absolutely was
Here.
forever ago.
Here it is. So I don't have the date on that. I'm so sorry. I normally do. So for his original pair, which I assume he did something similar for this one, for original pair, it was 15 pounds of honey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It is not. It is not a small amount.
That
No,
is
it's not like
just-
the jar I have in my cabinet.
and that made 6 gallons of mead.
Yeah.
So and this is rough. It's not the same because each honey will be different based on the hive and based on like where they got their nectar. But on average, a gallon of honey is going to be about 12 pounds on average.
Okay.
So the one I'm drinking right now, that used 24 pounds of honey. So that was roughly 2 gallons of honey.
Yeah, mine. The orange blossom one that I'm gonna do is probably gonna be about 30 pounds of honey.
God.
Yeah,
It's not honey.
just it's gonna be
So-
it's gonna be honey. It's gonna be a straight mead. No, just mead, water and or honey, water and yeast.
At this
So-
point in my life, I would need help, like even picking that up to dump it.
Well,
in.
you don't
Well,
have
we-
ones. Like they
yeah,
come in
we-
like gallon and a half jars.
Oh, okay.
It's very nice if you can have someone help you. You can
Yes.
do it alone, but it's very nice to have help. So essentially, let's go back to this. So you have your stock pot. You fill it maybe halfway with the water, the distilled water or spring water. And then you're going to slowly stir in your honey until it reaches full. You'll use a funnel, a brew funnel. Do you have that on hand?
I do.
A brew funnel going in the top of the carboy to pour that in, and then you go, I need to put more. Okay. So you'll mix more until you've got enough of the honey that you've measured that you need. And then
there's
the remaining.
Yeah, and there's a line on here, and you want to go to about like where
About
the
there.
lines are, because you
Okay.
need that room at the top.
Headroom is what it's called.
Yeah, there you
And-
go.
And we'll talk about why in a minute. But yeah, so you get all that in there, and then once it's in, you're going to go, oh, it's not all the way full, right? Because you were only doing about a 50-50 of water and honey up till that point. And also it's very hot. You want to warm it but not boil it. When you begin to boil it, you will destroy some of the very delicate chemical compounds in the honey that you do not want to destroy because you
Right.
want those flavors. So you don't boil it. So, okay, then you say, well, I have to fill the rest with water, cold water probably, so that it balances out to be not piping hot, but not cold. So I always keep like one of those 2.5 gallon things in the fridge or something. So that's a good balance point. Anyway, you fill up your carboy or your conical, whichever. And then you say, okay, time to put the yeast in. So you just take the packet, tear it, dump it in. Yeast have 2 phases, aerobic and then anaerobic. So in the beginning, you want to stir in that air, and then you don't want air messing with it at all. So you can use a brew spoon or a racking cane. Do you have something on hand to show?
I've got my brew spoon.
There you go.
Yes,
so it's
my
this long
giant-ass
stainless
brew
steel. Yeah, they're very long. You do it, and you feel like you feel like you're connecting with your medieval ancestors as you stir the.
And I've got
So-
the rocking cane.
There you go. So you stir it in there, and you get it aerated, and then you go, okay, we're done. You seal it up. So you use what's called an airlock, and there are 2 main types: an S lock or a water lock. That's a
Yeah, this is
water
the
one.
water lock.
You could also
Kinda
put
see
vodka
that.
in it.
Yes.
You'd fill water to that little line you could sort of see, and then so
Yeah.
gas can escape, but other things can't get in.
Right.
So you put that in the top.
And then there's the view from the
That's
bottom.
called a
So, like,
bung.
yeah, a
A
bung.
bung,
That's a
like
bung.
That's a
in
bung.
barrels too, right?
Yeah.
Like when you
Yes.
yeah.
They go in the bung hole. That's really what it's called.
Yep.
So they go in the bung hole in the top, and then that goes into the bung, and then you wait. You want to keep it somewhere not too warm. It doesn't have to be cold, but cool, and out of sunlight, because sunlight again will destroy things in there you don't want destroyed. And you just wait. I mean, the only thing you're really going to do is check maybe later that night or the next day to make sure in that headroom on top there's a nice healthy bit of foam that has formed. And then you'll know, okay, it's well on its way, it's fermenting. Within that first night, sometimes it will quote unquote blow the lock, meaning that it produces so much foam, it shoots through the lock and foam gets everywhere, and it's a sticky, messy mess that you have to deal with the next morning, and you go, oh, there's foam everywhere, and then you have to clean it up and refill your lock with water. And okay, that really would only happen the first night. If for some reason it's not foaming or bubbling the next morning, you might have dead yeast and pitch. That's what it's called when you add yeast, called pitching yeast. You might want to add new yeast before anything.
So it doesn't matter if you're just able to add more yeast if that's
usually, yeah, within that first day. If you're like, oh man, okay, you should be able to just add it, and it should be fine. Yeah. So
you can try some nutrient at the beginning as well.
Yes,
and
there's a thing called yeast nutrient.
Yeah, that's. Do I have some right here? No.
So the thing about yeast nutrient is yeast, like sugar, they eat sugar and poop out alcohol and carbon dioxide.
It's just
they like it's a powder. They like other chemicals to help them metabolize, and honey doesn't really have a lot of that. Things like grapes and apples and stuff do. So when you're making wine, you generally don't need yeast nutrient, but when you're making mead, it can be helpful very much to add yeast nutrient. Those calculators I mentioned that you can find online, there's even calculators that will say, depending on what yeast, how much honey, what all that, it'll tell you exactly when the best times to add yeast nutrient if you're interested in that kind of specific science. So okay, so you've done all that. It's foaming away, it's bubbling. You might add yeast nutrient a couple more times, maybe 2 weeks out and then 4 weeks out or something like that. But otherwise, you just wait. You just wait for weeks to months for it to finish doing its thing. There are a couple steps in there that we skipped over because they're optional and sciencey. A lot of people, most people probably would take what's called an original gravity. Do you have a hygrometer on hand?
No, I don't. That's the one thing I don't have.
Okay. There's a thing that looks like a big thermometer essentially, but it's not. Mm-hmm. It's a buoyant measurement tool that you use to measure something called the specific gravity. It's related to essentially density of things that are dissolved in the water. And you're measuring the original amount of that so that later when you're done, you take the final gravity, how much sugar has converted into alcohol. Essentially, you can do some quick math to figure out the percentage of alcohol by volume and the percentage of residual sugars. If you don't really care because you know your yeast well and you've done it a bunch, about how much it should come out to be. So I don't always measure because I don't always care.
But don't always give a crap. I don't
always give a crap. But
yeah, exactly.
I know certain yeast and certain amounts are going to yield within like a 15 to 18% alcohol by volume. So I'm good. I don't need to do the math. I've done it so many times and it always comes out in that range. I'm not worried about it. But if I was going to do a new yeast or a new formulation, I'd probably measure because I'd be like, I don't know how this turns out. But anyway, so you wait a really long time. It depends on the conditions. It could take weeks to months, depending on what's going on. It should really only take. Go ahead.
You're gonna be watching for bubbles in the airlock, and that's to tell you that the yeast have stopped. Like, okay, well, are they done?
Yeah,
that's how you know.
Okay. So, if you have glass carboys, at some point you'll want to do something called racking. So once that's done, what primary fermentation? You might only do one fermentation, but they still refer to it as primary fermentation. So it's done fermenting. You use this, show the racking cane again.
Oh yeah.
You use this long tube called a racking cane.
Right. So there's
an auto siphon.
Plastic part.
Yeah. And you use an auto siphon
connected to this long tube, and you
basically siphon all of the liquid off of the gross stuff that's settled on the bottom. Okay. Well, that's the auto siphon. That's
what I'm saying. So that's the rest.
That's okay. There you go. So, you siphon all the liquid off of the gross stuff on the bottom. It's mostly dead yeast, which are referred to as lees. So you siphon all of the mead off of the lees into an empty carboy. So most people have 2 glass carboys,
right,
that are the same size. So you siphon it into there, and you might put additives in at that point. You might put maybe a flavor additive you didn't want in primary fermentation for some reason. You can add things. You can just chuck in vanilla beans or whatever the heck you want in that first thing if you want, but you could add things at the second.
Sounds good. Vanilla mead.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But you could add stuff. You could add stuff in the second thing. You could add a clarifying agent, which is a type of a chemical that will help it become clearer instead of being cloudy.
That's the
And
bentonite.
so bentonite is what I use, and
Oh,
what I'll
bentonite.
use.
Okay. Use that in
Yep.
soap making too, I think, or lotion.
Do you?
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
It's a type of clay. It's a type of naturally occurring clay.
Right.
And you could use bentonite. I would actually recommend using bentonite in primary fermentation because it works a little differently than how some of the other clarifying agents work. With bentonite, clumps of bad stuff adhere to the bentonite. It gets heavy and falls to the bottom. They fall off. The bentonite rises. Clumps adhere to it. It falls to the bottom. So putting it in from the beginning with the bubbles to help carry the bentonite back up is helpful. Every other type of clarifying agent would go in after that racking from the primary fermentation. So you might add a clarifying agent, you might add additives, you might add a chemical that makes sure to sterilize any yeast, just in case there were some left over that wanted to get greedy and eat some more sugar, but you're like, no, I'm done. I don't want any more fermenting. You can add an agent called potassium sorbate. In fact, it's a preservative you see in lots of things in the grocery store. And the reason it's in there is it sterilizes yeast. It won't kill them. They can't reproduce. So the current generation of yeast is the only generation that will exist. So you might add that, and you might add things to balance it, because you'll probably sample it at this point and you'll go, wrong tube. Oh, no.
See, you were better at this before.
I heard I heard Caitlin say something and it made me. Anyway. So you might go, okay, it's too tart. Or you might go, oh, it's too sweet. Or it's too... If there's a flavor difference, there are certain chemicals you can add to adjust that. The main things you would be looking at is if it's too tart, meaning it's too acidic, or if it's too sweet and there's no tartness, and you might want a small amount of tartness to balance that, like you might have in some wines, you would add a little bit of acidity. And there are different types of acids that you might add. I, at this point, really only use citric acid or sometimes malic acid, but there are acid blends that you can use, whatever your preference is. So you might add things that secondary thing when you're racking into the new thing. And then you wait another round of waiting for it to become clarified. And so what you're just waiting for any little cloudy bits to drop out. And as soon as you can read a newspaper through the mead, you're good. Now you might use a light to help aid in that if it's very dark, like the one he's drinking right now. You might go, let me shine a flashlight because it's just very dark. But I don't care how dark it is. I want it to be not cloudy. That's what we mean when we say clear. So if you could read newsprint through it, you'd go, okay, it's clear enough. And we can get some
and by saying that, so nobody misunderstands, you're meaning that you hold it on the other side of the big glass jar, and you can see through it. Okay.
Now, I have, as you saw, a conical fermenter that is not glass. So I have to take a sample and look at it through a glass to check its clarity, because I can't really, that's one drawback with it. Although some stainless steel larger, like those 20-gallon ones, they have a window. You can check through that with stuff. But yeah. People so the other difference, why would you use a conical, which is what I have, is first of all, you can get them in larger sizes. They do have smaller ones. They have 5-gallon ones, but you can get them in larger sizes. The other benefit is there's no racking. So on the bottom, if you look at that on the bottom, there's like a port, and there's a thing that attaches. Yeah, you can bring it up. There's a thing that attaches to the bottom of that port with that red valve called a trub tub. And it's basically a bulbous container of the same food grade plastic that screws in. And then you open the valve during fermentation to allow things to sink into it. And you can see, because it's not clear, but it's still white, you can see a difference between where there's solids and where there's liquids. So the solids fall into that trub tub, and then you can turn the valve to seal it off, unscrew the trub tub, and dump it out. And you just dump all of those yuck parts out, and then you can put the trub tub back on if you want, if it's still going. And so I don't have to rack, because all of the solids will naturally fall to the bottom and be out. I just got sick of racking. I didn't like it anymore, so I bought that.
Every time you
So-
say racking, I picture somebody laying on one of those things screaming.
Oh, as in
If that's what you're into, but
I mean,
no.
everyone's got their thing. But racking is the technical term for transferring liquids from one container to another.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It took me a while to actually realize that and, actually go look it up and understand that.
For sure.
Well, now maybe I won't have that picture in my head when I hear the word rack.
Well, there you go.
Okay. So yes, so that's pretty much it. Then the last step would be to bottle it. Usually,
Yeah, actually,
usually.
so we got a picture of what it looks like when it's in the container. So we didn't
do
get to
it.
that. Yeah. So let's bring that up. Yeah,
This
so
one?
that was the latest batch we did. And so this is the one that had pear in it. So, we measured out like, here's a bunch of pear, like 5 or 6 or 7 pounds of pear, put that in, and then did all the steps that we talked about. And you can see the cap on top.
If I go back to your original pear that we did,
Ignore the
ago.
seltzer bottles on the bottom. That was done in my kitchen.
If we go back to the original, in the original you used 22 pounds of pears. I don't think we used as much pear this time.
We definitely did not use
but
that.
we used pear juice.
We did use pear juice and
So-
preservative-free pear juice.
Yeah, it must be free of preservatives, particularly potassium sorbate, but you really want it free of all preservatives.
Yeah.
Because of the yeast?
Exactly. If you sterilize the yeast, then they can't ferment at all, right?
Right.
So you don't want
they're very
preservatives.
weak alcohol.
Yeah, so you want raw, real, natural pear juice. You also don't want pear juice that's been added like sugar or corn syrup. That'll be a nasty tasting drink. You want it real pear juice. You don't want it from concentrate. You want fresh or raw or whatever, without preservatives. So that's what we used. We did use some chunks of pear though, as you could see.
Yeah.
So you put all those things in, let it ferment, time to bottle. There's a bottling wand, which is an attachment to that autosiphon he has. And it essentially has a little spring-loaded valve on the bottom where...
It's just as long.
No, that's the wine thief. That's the
thief? Oh, well then I don't have that one on me.
You have one, but maybe not on you. So
yeah, maybe it's not on me.
There's a little like a rubber foot almost sticking out of it.
Oh, and no, we don't actually have that one. That's the one thing I have to go get.
Oh, okay.
Because remember, we didn't use it last time.
Okay. Mine's in the basement, or I'd go get it. But when it pushes on the bottom of a bottle, it releases the seal, right? And then all that pressure from the autosiphon that you've pumped will flow mead through it into the bottle. And you want to go right up to the top of a bottle because the amount of space that is being displaced by the bottling wand is exactly the amount of space you want to be left in the top of a bottle when you bottle it. So you pull it out, and then you cork it with a corker. There's a hand corker, which is
I do have one of those.
You have a hand corker?
I do. Yeah. I know we use your floor one, but I do have a hand one.
Is the hand corker? I didn't even know you had one. So
I'm borrowing it from a friend. But yeah,
Oh.
it's just this little thing where you've got like you put this on top of like you put the cork on the bottle, you put this on top of the cork, you lock it in place, and you compress it down.
Nice.
Exactly. A floor corker is the same thing, except it's on a stand that is very
and you
heavy.
can just like put all your weight into it.
Yeah, it's so much easier than using a hand corker. Yeah. So, which is what we used last time and what I always use. But so you put it in the bottle, you cork it, it's done. You can drink it right then. You could let it age for a while and then drink it. The other thing you can do is if you have perhaps a lower alcoholic content mead that probably has some carbonation, something in the 5 to 10% alcohol and a higher carbonation, you might put it in beer bottles, and you have beer caps that you clamp on, and that's another tool that I guess I could get out and show you. But again, it's in the basement. But it's you manually crank those. That is even more of a pain in the ass than hand corking.
Yeah.
Because you're using manual hand pressure to crimp down the edges of a bottle cap.
Oh wow.
And it's designed to be doable, but by the time you get to like the 36th bottle or whatever, you're like, I'm freaking done. Okay. So I usually don't. I have beer bottles and I have a beer bottle cap thing, but I don't do that anymore. I just do the higher content alcohol because
Yeah.
bottling them is annoying. So, okay, so those are the basics.
But you do get a lot of mead out of the, especially the 6 gallon. Like, I can't imagine like if you got that other one.
Do you want me to bring up the picture of the
Oh yeah.
bottles?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Because that's that's what we came out with, and that is a lot of
Mhm.
party time.
Yeah.
29, 30 bottles total,
Something
something
like
like that. Yeah.
Wow.
It's just, you get a lot.
Now, where do
So
you get the bottles? Is there like a supplier?
Yeah,
Yeah.
brew store, where you get most of this stuff.
there's brew supply stores, but you could also get it online from brew supply stores, or from like
Yeah.
Amazon has all this stuff as well.
Right.
I'd say, support a local brew store if you
Yeah.
can.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, and they're usually very helpful people. Like the one, it's a shame actually, because there was one in Bethlehem. I used to live in Allentown, and I don't anymore, but there was one in Bethlehem that closed, and they were like just the most hilarious guys in there, and you could tell they loved what they did. And every time you'd go in, they'd be like, "Oh, hey, we just brewed up this whatever," and it'd be different, not always mead, sometimes mead, but it'd be like different stuff, and they'd be like, "Yeah, try some," and you'd be like, "Okay," like, so they were always in there, like,
That's
so
fantastic.
interesting people, and they knew everything. If you were like, "I don't know how to do X, Y, or Z," or my thing came out too, tannic, what do I do? They would be like, "Oh, okay, they knew all the chemistry, they knew all of it." And most brew places, this will be true. Your
Oh yeah.
staff who run it, they know what they're talking about. You can ask them any question. They're like, "Oh, here's what you need." So there's a whole question you could have about making bottles fancy. There's frosted bottles. You can have bottle labels. You can wax the top of bottles. You can shrink wrap foil tops. You can do all that. That's all cool. I've done most of that at different points in time. But most of the time, you just leave it like the picture you saw.
Yep.
You might use maybe a Sharpie or a dry erase to label it, or you might write that on the box where you store them in and say, "This is pear melomel," or whatever. So if you have different types, you know what they are.
Right.
But otherwise, if it's just for you and friends when they come over and family, you don't need fancy labels. The only time I've really done that is if it was like a gift for someone.
Yeah.
The real creativity comes in when you're not doing just honey, water, and yeast, but when you say, "I want to make something that I can't buy."
Yeah.
And so I am going to make it for me, or as a gift for someone, or whatever. So pear, for example, we did that.
Yeah.
This is a sizer. Sizer is, I bet you could guess based on the name. What would you think a sizer is?
Apple? I don't know. Saying, I bet you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
Was I right?
Exactly.
Okay.
You're right. So instead of water, you use apple cider, fresh apple cider, no preservatives. Very important. So the cool thing about that is you've got to support your local farm stand. That's the only way you're getting it.
Right.
So you instead of water, it's gallons of cider and honey. And usually I will put in cinnamon sticks right into primary fermentation. Just put them right in there. And so it's got this little hint of cinnamon as well. So it's cool for like fall time, Christmas time. It's a fun thing for that.
Yeah. Now, can you use fruit like plums or peaches?
Yeah. I made a peach melomel for Lauren. That was one of the small number of things that did not turn out well.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was unfortunate because I was like, it was for, for graduating. I was like, oh, I know that's, your favorite fruit. Let me do this. Didn't turn out well, but normally it does. I just don't, something went wrong in that batch and I don't know what went wrong, honestly, but normally peach would be a good one. I've had peach melomels that were amazing. You could do plum. I haven't had it, but you could. You could probably do any fruit. There are certain fruits I just don't. Maybe it's just me, but I would never try it. I don't think it will go well.
Yeah. We tried a watermelon once, but I still think, so here's what happened with that one. We got the watermelon, we did everything. The only thing that we changed was we used ale yeast and not wine yeast, which definitely changes the profile of the
Oh, yeah.
beverage. And after bottling, by the time I got home, all of the corks had popped off
Oh, geez.
the bottles because of the pressure, the carbonation, and the flavor was wrong. I personally still think that if you get the right honey and watermelon, it can be done, because there's a lot of sugar there to be used. But Brandon is of the mindset that it probably is not going to be great. I'm still going to try it one day.
You know what? Go for it. You do
I
it,
will.
because I'm never doing that again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will do it. I will do it with the wine yeast, and we will see what happens. Wait for summer when the watermelons are ripe.
This is
Now,
my
with-
theory. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say, with peaches, would you have to peel the skin? Because I saw like the pears, the skin was on it, but the peach
Yeah.
has a different kind of skin.
You don't have. So when you rack it, that'll
Oh,
be left at the bottom anyway.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
The
But
only,
you need
the
to get
only
rid of the
thing
pit.
Yeah, you would need to get rid of the pit. The only thing you'd want to worry about is the tannin content. So tannins are a naturally occurring part of like the hard stuff of fruit, I guess I want to say. So like seeds, stems, skins, those things have tannins. The soft flesh doesn't really have tannins. So when you have wine, usually there's some tannin content because of the skins. So, and I believe it's a red wine has a higher tannin content than white wine. I want to say.
Yeah, I think so.
Cider has a tannin content because the skins of animals.
It's apple
But-
skins. Yeah.
That being said, some people add raw tannin, like grape tannin or whatever, to their mead, just to add that sort of puckering sensation that tannins
It's a
give.
tardiness. It
Yeah.
adds some acidity to it, so it's not just like completely sweet.
Mhm. Have you ever had tea that was steeped way too long?
Yes.
And when
There-
you go, oh, like you make that sound like,
Right.
That
and when
sensation.
your tongue starts to feel a little funny. Yeah.
yes, that is tannins at work. So a little bit of tannins can be good. Too much tannins could be bad. So that might be my concern with a thick skin like peach. You might want to peel them. I don't know.
How about pumpkin?
So I've always wanted to, and I might this year. The
Ooh,
thing with
okay.
pumpkin is it's real messy. You would basically have to use pumpkin puree, and you're probably leaving a lot of it in the first rack, like the first primer fermentation. You're probably leaving a lot of it because it's so pulpy. There's a lot of fiber in a pumpkin,
Yeah.
and yeah.
But it could be done. I mean, theoretically, anything.
I'm thinking fall, pumpkin.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that. That's why the sizer is so good.
Yeah, it's very good. So, so malic acid is the acid that's in apples. So you could add that to a sizer if it wasn't quite tart enough, which sometimes occurs. There's just so much. You can't imagine how much sugar is in like 6 gallons of apple cider and 2 gallons of honey. It's a lot of sugar. So you can, you can get a lot of alcohol out of that. There's still going to be a lot of sugar left over. So it's almost like, oh God, it's like so sweet. A little bit of acidity really helps it become a good beverage. But
Yeah.
I have this theory that it could just be my preference, but I think tropical things like coconut and watermelon, I don't think they'll translate well. Maybe some people out there have done it, but I just don't know.
Yeah,
What
I'd
else,
like to.
like-
I'd like to hear from
Hey.
people about that. But the coconut I can understand because there's some sugar, but there's not a lot. You'd have to add sugar. Add
Coconut is
something to it.
gross.
Okay, well, I mean, everyone's got their preference about coconut. I'm not gonna coconut shame here. I'm just saying that that it is possible, and sometimes you use what's available if you want to add that flavor to it. So I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that have done lots of experimentation with it. So it's worth checking out for sure.
Yeah.
But I will
So-
still try the watermelon, whether you like it or
Okay.
not.
I'm gonna try pumpkin, knowing that it won't go well. you
Okay,
know?
fair enough.
So
Yeah.
I'm still gonna do it.
Sometimes you just need to waste your time and do some fun stuff with it.
I'm gonna do a
especially-
small batch.
Yeah.
I have 1 gallon carboys so that I can do small batches of
Oh,
everything.
that's a good idea. I should do it. I should do a 1 gallon version with the watermelon to do a test.
I only do it when it's like experiment. So like
I'm gonna put that in my
a
notes.
few years ago, I wanted to know two things. I wanted to connect with my ancestors, and I wanted to know that if there was an apocalypse, I would have a skill set. And I was
Yep.
like, I'm not going to be able to purchase mead or purchase yeast from the internet, so I need to know how to do it the normal way. So I got an apple off of a tree. You can't use them from the grocery store. They've been cleaned and waxed. So I got an apple off a tree, shaved its skin, started a starter culture of yeast by just giving it honey and warm water and keeping it alive. And then I boiled put everything in hot, just boiled water to sterilize everything instead of using a spray sanitizer, which we would normally use, like a chemical sanitizer that you would use in like a kitchen, like an industrial kitchen.
Oh yeah,
I
we didn't even talk
do that.
about the sterilizing.
Well,
so
yeah,
we
'cause it's
could
such
use
a
a
boring-
sterilizing agent
Yeah, you sterilize everything at first, but
because you don't want
but I
anything
didn't
but
in,
yeast.
Yeah, I didn't in this particular case. I boiled everything. The only modern convenience I used was an airlock, but I guess I didn't need to use an airlock. You don't really have to. And I made a gallon of Chouchin, which is a French recipe for mead that may date as far back as the Druids. We don't know for sure.
Wow.
And so it's a buckwheat sizer. So I used buckwheat honey and apple cider, and everything was done as it would have been done, in medieval times or older. And it was great. It was great.
Oh.
But I only made 4 bottles of it because I only did a gallon thing. But,
Yeah.
So
You can make more.
I could.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. Do you still have that culture?
I don't still have the culture, but I have wild pear trees in my yard, so I could just,
Oh, there you go.
but
Go to a farmer's market or a
Right.
local orchard and just get some fresh apples.
Yeah, there's an orchard here. They have apples, peaches.
There's
I think they have
there's a farm
pears.
store like nearby that I can go to.
Oh, there you go.
You have
Yeah, oh
specific-
yeah. I wasn't saying you drive all the way down. I'm just
Yeah.
saying there is one here.
No, it's fantastic.
Okay, so now we were talking earlier about the difference between what you're drinking, Lehel, and what you are drinking, Brandon, and the color, and that's because of what it is, I guess.
So the different honeys
There you go.
for this one. So mine, I used a clover honey, and that
Or was it
is-
cotton?
No, it was cotton. It was cotton. I'm sorry,
Cotton.
you're right. It was cotton honey, and that
Yeah.
is dark.
Dark.
It is dark. I mean, you saw the picture of it in the bottle or in the carboy. It's just there's just
Here, we'll
like-
pop that back up again.
it is
Oh, yeah.
it is very, very dark. And I mean that's great. There's nothing wrong with it. There's just some honeys like that. I don't think it matters for the sugar content or anything like that. But I don't I don't think it matters too much for the flavor, I would say. At least not that I've noticed. But I guess
Tasted
however, yeah. There are very few meads that taste bad. Now, so the stuff that does actually taste bad. So this is why you use honey, is because if you use stuff that is like corn syrup that is made to look like honey or sugar, it is just garbage.
It doesn't
Absolutely
taste very good.
no.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
translate to a wine.
There is a name for that. It's called, I want to say it's Acerglyn. Let me check that.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough. I can't imagine someone would do that on purpose. But
Acerglyn is maple. Hold on.
okay, yeah.
You can make alcohol from maple syrup, and that's called Acerglyn.
Okay.
Now, can you use maple syrup, like real maple syrup in mead making, or no?
As an additive?
Yeah, to give the flavor.
I don't
You
see
could.
why
It would
not.
technically be part Acerglyn
Circling.
then.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean you can use pretty much anything you want as a flavor. I mean, I guess within reason. Where no one's here is throwing like raw vegetables or
Yeah.
or like meat in their mead.
Oh.
Which look, I'm just saying, you can't. I said you can use practically anything, and I'm correcting myself here.
I'll take some beef mead, please.
All right.
There's a type of bee, scavenger bees, that I might be thinking of the wrong bee, but I think it's called scavenger bees. They make honey off of. It's not off of rotting flesh. It's off of the materials that are on rotting flesh.
Yeah,
it's
the bacteria.
So disgusting. And if you made honey out of that, I guarantee you'd vomit. But you could.
Yeah,
you could make meat out of that.
You could, but don't do it. Just don't do it.
Now, where do you get the honey? These big gallon jars.
Yeah. Good question. So you either know a beekeeper and you buy it directly from them, or you purchase it from larger farms, apiaries that sell it in large quantity. And I had a guy, a friend of mine who was a beekeeper, who we used to get a really good deal, and he had the best honey, and then cancer took him from us. But so yeah, it was just like sad, but but he was like the coolest little weird guy, and like his whole job, he was like retired from the military, and all he did was keep bees. And he was like, just imagine like what kind of person that must be. He was just like so bizarre and very kind. Yeah, he was just selling honey to people all day. But
I don't think you'd have to be kind to be able to like work with bees and not have them react to him in a adverse way. You know what I mean?
Because agitated, bees definitely don't like it. Yeah.
It's that, or you either know a beekeeper or you get it from like a good source that comes directly from beekeepers, like a farmer's market or something.
Oh yeah, farmers markets, you find them there and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
I try not to use honey from the grocery store, just because sometimes you just never know, especially with mass marketed products.
Is it real?
Yeah, is it completely real? Like, are they supplementing it with something? It's really hard to tell. I mean, as I'm sure someone with some experience might be able to discern a difference between corn syrup flavored honey and then actual honey, but just get try to support your local stores, local farmers markets. It's usually better.
Yeah.
Oh, he's grabbing a thing. Yeah, but yeah. So the color just comes from the type of honey. I'll be honest, I'm not even sure why cotton honey is so dark, but hey.
So this is called a refractometer. So there's basically two parts to it. There's the window, the sample window. You would drop a liquid there and close this over it. And then there's the eyepiece, which looks kind of like the end of a telescope or microscope. And you look at it, toward a light source. And I can't really show you with the camera, but essentially there are different refractometers for different substances. They measure different things. This one is designed for measuring the alcohol content of liquids. But there are refractometers designed, they would look exactly the same, only the scale in here would be different. And they're designed to measure the sugar content of a liquid, and you can use them to determine if it is real honey or if it has been altered.
Oh, perfect.
So it would look the same on the outside, but the scale on the inside would be different. So there are refractometers for that. I'll probably buy one eventually. This one's for alcohol content because I kept forgetting to measure the original gravity of stuff, and I was just like, I can just measure it at the end with this. So.
Oh, there you go. Instead of doing math, you can just
I can just look in there and it tells me on the bar how much alcohol's in it.
Perfect.
So, but there is a way to do it to measure with honey. So you can do that, but I would say don't go buy it from Walmart anyway, because you're supporting a chain of corporations rather than a local.
Right. Yeah, you want to do local.
So
yeah.
And I can guarantee that if you find a local beekeeper that's going to sell you honey, they're going to be a very interesting character that you will cherish. So.
Yeah. Plus, mead making in general is all about like the small person and the little local group. Like you're not
like
if you didn't want to make a mead and you want to just go buy mead, I mean, you can just go do that. Like you can buy lots and lots of different types of mead. So if you're actually interested in making mead then definitely local brewery store, local beekeepers, local farmers markets for your fruits. Definitely, do what you can.
Yeah. No, I get you because so there are places that like mass produce mead that you can
yes.
buy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So this is, I'm sure, much better.
The most common example would be like Dutch Gold, I think is an easy one to go to. Now, have I bought their honey? Sure. Because if I want to get a large quantity of blueberry honey, they have that or whatever, But there are places where they just have hundreds of apiaries at farms over, like, say, Lancaster County or something like that. And that's all they do. But they're a corporation, and their beekeepers are like, not well-paid employees that, I don't want to pick out any company in particular and get sued for defamation or something, but like they're corporations. Whereas you can have a local beekeeper that has not that many, and they have a actual relationship with their bees.
And with you as a person, as a customer.
Right.
Yeah, which is always nice.
Yes.
So
definitely.
Yes. So that is that. There's a couple other things too you can do to mead to make it different. One is you can cook the mead. So I said before, you don't want the mead to boil. That's true. You could slow cook it, which in ancient times was very difficult because you had to heat it for so long without being diluted in water, but not boil it. And that took a very, 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 very long time. Nowadays, it still takes a very long time. You could use a slow cooker, like a crock pot, and cook the mead on low for 6 to 8 hours. And that last hour is gonna matter because you are checking its darkness. Right? If it turns black, it's partially burned. Everything up to black is okay. So you can take a mead that's like golden and get it to be like so dark brown, like darker brown than what he's drinking right now. And it caramelizes part of the honey. Then if you make mead off of that, it has this sort of toasted marshmallow flavor. And it's called a bochet, which is a French word. And it means burnt.
So toasted marshmallow with vanilla sounds good.
I have made that. I have made that. It's very good. Mm-hmm.
That would be pretty awesome.
And I guess they have to be small batches then, unless they make bigger slow cookers for people who do what you do. Because otherwise, like I have a slow cooker that's like that big, but that's like the biggest I've ever seen. I don't know.
Yeah.
You could make
I borrowed someone's and I did 2, and I mixed some burnt honey, not burnt. It's not actually burnt. That's just sometimes what it's called, but you don't want to burn it. I mixed some cooked honey with some not cooked honey, just so that because I only had 2 crock pots, but I did 2 crock pots worth. And I spent a whole day literally just in my kitchen watching honey. So I was like, all right, this is cool. It tastes great. I don't know if I'm going to do it all the time, but yeah. So you can do that. You can add fruits. You can add herbs and spices, which is called a metheglin, including tea. So I like putting honey, particularly blueberry honey, in Dragonwell, like Chinese Dragonwell green tea. I don't know if you've ever had that. No. It's so good. And I was sitting there one day and I was like, I love drinking this. What if I made it mead? So
that's the question.
I bought a shit ton of tea. I made gallons of green tea, and instead of water, I used green tea. And instead of regular honey, I used blueberry honey. And I made my favorite tea as a mead. And it was great. It was great. It probably was the shortest lived mead I ever made because it was so good. It just
consumed that quickly.
It was really good. Yeah. So you could do that. We've already talked about adding cinnamon. You can add, you can do mulling spices, which includes
like
cinnamon.
Cloves and.
Yeah. But you could get like a packet of
mm-hmm.
mulling spices and do that. I think I'm doing that in a sizer for next cold season. All kinds of stuff.
Now, the spices, is that added? Are those added? It would be added in the beginning of the process or at a later point?
So it depends. I would probably just put them in the beginning personally, so they have a long time to steep. The
Yeah.
concern would be the tannin content, because most herbs and spices are going to have a crap load of tannins in them because they're that hard part of the plant. So you probably want to like put it in, but maybe have it in. They have these like mesh Ziploc kind of bags.
Steeping bag, yeah.
It's like a steeping bag, so you might want to use that to try to pull it out when you're done, kind of thing. Now, if you are doing it in a carboy, that can be more difficult. You'd have to rack off of it essentially. If you're using a large conical fermenter like I have, the aperture at the top is like that big. I can just dunk the bag in and then pull it out from the string if I want. You know what I mean? So like there's different ways you can do it depending on what your setup is. But yeah, I would probably just put it in.
Okay. Wasn't there a question back a ways we said we would talk about when we got further along? I don't remember either.
We talked about the side. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. I just don't want to forget if it was something you guys wanted to talk about.
Wow. And then I would say the most important part is enjoy it. Enjoy the process. Have fun with it. Have fun.
Yeah, I mean, like there's all the experimentation with flavors and stuff.
Absolutely. And you got to be patient. It certainly takes some time. And if you don't want to do like large batches, sure, you can do small batches. Just try it out for yourself and see if it's a thing you like.
Now, how small can you go?
Oh, I don't know.
You can go as small as you want. What you could do is, I would recommend. What's okay?
I said like a gallon, or can you go less than a gallon? I mean, I don't know.
Good. I probably wouldn't go less than a gallon, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
What I would do is, you can go to the grocery store. Most grocery stores, or you could probably find a grocery store near you that sells, and I forget the name of the brand. It starts with an M, I think. There's a brand of apple juice in the like organic foods aisle, and you want to find it. It's got a loopy handle, I believe.
Is it Mott's?
I don't think it's Mott's.
I don't think it's
No,
Mott's.
it's like Menschelman's or something. I don't know.
Oh, Musselman's?
It might be Musselman's.
Nope, I don't know. Sorry. I'm just throwing names out there.
Anyway, you want to get that gallon of apple juice, and it's no preservatives. And so you could either make a sizer or drink the apple juice, then clean out the container. But it's a gallon, and the top aperture is the perfect size for a 1 gallon bung. Now, 1 gallon bungs are smaller than the 5 and 6 gallon bungs. So, which those both use the same size, but for a 1 gallon bung, it's smaller. So you'd want to go to like a brew store or order from Amazon a 1 gallon bung and an airlock. But you could get a 1 gallon bung and an airlock, and a packet of yeast is like 50 cents or something. I mean, they're not a lot.
Yeah,
yeast.
It's cheap.
So you could spend just a small amount of money, get a 1 gallon jug essentially at the grocery store, and if you wanted to make a sizer, it also has the apple juice. You're ready to go. All you need to do is get some honey. So you could really, for a small amount of money, go make your first mead and be done. And actually, you wouldn't even need sterilizing agents if you were making a sizer, because it's already in the container. So you could spend a small chunk of change, really, really tiny, and make your first 1 gallon batch of mead like tomorrow if you want it. So
How about, you know how violets are edible? Is that something you'd ever put in mead, or would it make it too sweet? Or
flowers?
Yeah, just curious.
I plan to make a lavender mead coming up, actually.
A lavender mead.
Because lavender, there's some evidence that it reduces anxiety, the smell of it and the taste of it. So I'm going to make a lavender mead. And I think then at the end of a stressful day of work, you can just say, I'm going to smell my lavender mead.
And then also drink my lavender mead.
Drink my lavender mead.
Yeah.
I love the smell of lavender, and it is very calming.
Yeah.
I have lavender growing. Well, not right now. It will be growing outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's not actually gotten there yet.
Yeah.
The plants are out there.
There's a lavender farm about 10 minutes from where I live, so I was just like, going there, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a local beekeeper, now that I think about it, that they have a deal with them. There is lavender honey. Again, it's not lavender flavored. It's from lavender flowers.
Right.
I get the lavender honey and the fresh lavender. I'm like, oh, let's do it. Come on. It's going to be so good.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But yeah,
Definitely.
so you could basically anything that you think would taste good, sweet, you could make it into a mead. Now, actually, let's stop there. You could make a not sweet mead. Those do exist. There are meads that are completely dry.
Yep.
I just don't like them, but they do
Yeah.
exist. So,
It's like you can get them, but who would want them? I'm
Well, I
people
mean,
have their
you
taste.
got
Yeah, everybody has different
dry
tastes.
wines, dry champagnes. It's
Mhm.
it's possible. I mean, I occasionally like a dry champagne. It's sometimes nice. But I don't think I've ever had a dry mead. Um, and it's but it's on the table. So
Oh,
there you go.
that reminds me of another one we've tried together, Lehel. Bragot. So Bragot is part mead, part beer. Usually a wheat beer.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And so so you it's difficult to make if you've never made beer before, which is more complicated than making mead.
Yeah.
So I've not made one the traditional way, but some people would agree a completely legitimate way to make Bragot is to take mead and beer and just add them together.
Mix.
And that's what we did, and it was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
If you have a
Yeah.
beer you like and a mead you like,
You can just add
and
them
you think
together.
they'll complement, then try it out.
Yeah, I don't like the taste of beer, but sometimes I sit there and I think, if I made beer, I could make this flavor.
Yeah, there you go.
flavor.
Yeah.
You
I
might
gotta
like
say,
mead.
yeah, there you go. I gotta say, there are definitely a lot of beers that I don't like. I had the misfortune of recently tasting a lager again, and I'm like, no. So I don't do hoppy beers. That's just it's too bitter. Even a little bit, I just don't like it
Yeah.
anymore. So, I like a dark ale or a wheat beer. But yeah, those would definitely pair well with a mead. Again,
Yeah, I
it all
don't.
depends on like the individuals and individual tastes, but
Right,
it can be
right.
done. It can be done. Where there's a
Can
will,
be
there's a
done.
way.
Yeah.
Yes. And so would you guys ever consider like a business, or this is always going to be
Oh
for
no, there's a
personal?
whole lot of red tape
Oh,
involved with it, and
right.
PA liquor laws are just the worst. No,
Really?
yeah, just
So
no.
it's a lot more fun, just you and your friends.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, even if technically, if I said, "Hey, I'm going to sell you a bottle of this," it's a crime. It could be a whole thing. Like, would I get arrested? Probably not. Probably no one would know about it. But I would like don't mess with it.
Yeah.
I just
Right.
I go, do you want a bottle? Because I have like 120 bottles. Do you want one? Like, I don't care.
Well,
You know what I mean? So just take one. So that's not illegal.
right.
Selling it is illegal. So what I do is I'll say to people who know that I make meat. I just did this with my wife's boss. She wanted to get an elderberry mead for her fiance's birthday because they were. I don't know why they thought they would like it. She thought he would. So okay. So I said, well, this is what it would cost for the elderberry juice, and this is what it would cost for the honey. I have tons of yeast. So if you purchase those items, I'll make it. And all I'll do is I'm going to keep a bottle, and you'll get, I think it was 3 or 4 bottles. I wasn't
She
sure.
made a small batch.
Yeah, small batch. Yeah. And they were like, okay. So they bought the stuff, and I made it, and they got bottles, and I got. Now, if they were going to try and find and purchase elderberry mead, like, let me just look here. Like, what's a bottle of that commercially? So it'd be, you can't get it from this company in our state, but if you lived in Kansas, you could get a 750 milliliter bottle for like $20, which was more than what they spent on the materials to make it here. So you know what I mean. So it's like, yeah, if people want to make stuff, you buy the materials, I'll do it. I just enjoy making it. So
Right.
Exactly.
It's the same as if somebody came to a quilter and said, "I'll buy you all the fabric, and if you'll make me the
You go
quilt."
make it.
Yeah.
It's the difference. It's the difference between going out to a restaurant and cooking at home. You buy a bottle of meat at a store. You're paying for all that extra, the shipping, the marketing, all of that label. Even if it's a relatively inexpensive bottle, you're still paying for all of that. And
Right.
honestly, the honey is the most expensive part. But if you can get a good deal on honey, like I said, the last batch, 29 to 30 bottles of mead. That's a lot of mead, and I definitely came out on top. So, and I'm still giving it away. It's just like I happen to have like a dozen bottles left.
Yeah.
Now, did you say how you had to store the mead once it was bottled? I don't remember if we
In bottles.
Like
As long as it's
you
not
do
in a
with
like
wine.
in a closet or somewhere where it's some dark, not exposed to the sun.
Like
so-
wine, you wouldn't want a lot of sun exposure because it could break it down.
You don't want it in a hot environment.
Yeah.
Dry room temperature or cool if possible.
Right.
You know,
Like a
people got
crawl
their wines-
space or
Right.
basement.
Yeah, exactly. Or the darkest room in your house. If it's the mud room, the bottles are sealed. It's not like anything's going to get into it.
Right. Or a walk-in closet. Somebody
Yeah.
opens it up and they're like, whoa.
Stacks of things. Yeah, no, my parents have been buying a bunch of wine, and they store it in the crawl space, and I do it with my mead. So, yeah, it's a good place.
Okay. And one other question I have, because it seems like we're winding down a bit, unless you come up with something else you want to talk about.
No, go ahead.
Do you ever think about writing, like a little book about, about this, about mead making?
The guy
not claiming to be an expert, but saying, from my
as an author, you're asking us if we want to write a book.
The guy who taught me wrote an article that has been published about mead making, which he gave me a digital copy of, and I have that. I mean, I read it like probably 4 times when I first got it before he came to my house to teach me, just so I like knew what I was doing before he got there, kind of thing. But I don't think I've looked at it since then. But it's honestly like he did a great job. And he's not the only one who's written that kind of thing before, and like it's been done. So I don't think there's much I could add to that discourse. So I don't think I would. That's not the type of writing that I do. But
Okay.
Yeah, I think Brandon's hands are better served making more mead. Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, I guess we're sort of wrapped up here. But otherwise, are we finished, do you think, or?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
think we said
thank you. It was very entertaining and very enlightening, and I look forward to one day trying something.
The next gathering.
Yeah, we can connect.
Yeah.
We got some mead.
We got some mead.
We got some mead.
Too.
Like vanilla mead.
Oh.
Well, yes. So I did a vanilla bochet that was years ago, and I can do another one. It's time consuming. You have to take a day off of work or do it on the weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
Never mind, don't do that for me. But if you do it, I'll have some.
I eventually will do it again, and I'll let you know. But all right. Okay. I will catch you later.
All right.
All right. Everybody have a good night. All right.